Today we're diving into a really fascinating text called The Resonance of Inherent Divinity. It offers this powerful perspective on Scripture and salvation that kind of flips some common ideas right on their head. It basically asks us to think, what if the divine isn't something out there we have to find, but something in here that we just need to remember?
And the source material, it just gets straight to the point with this. The idea is that this whole search for salvation, it's not some external hunt for a thing we don't have. No. Instead, it's an internal awakening to something we've always had, like a seed of the divine was planted inside us from the very beginning.
So the foundation for this whole way of thinking is what the source calls a gospel without partiality. And the argument here is that the original good news was meant to be radically inclusive, a universal message for literally everyone, with no exceptions, no one left on the outside looking in.
This really gets to the heart of it. The text is arguing that our connection to the divine isn't some kind of hierarchy, God up there and us down here. It's something that's just innate. It's an internal part of our very being. We are, as the text itself says, the offspring of God.
But that raises a pretty critical question. If our divine origin is the actual truth, then where in the world did all the fear and the shame and these feelings of being separate come from? And that's really the central conflict that this text tries to untangle.
The source has a name for this distortion. It calls it the accusation against identity. It's this idea that the original good news got broken, it got fractured, twisted from a message that confirms who we are into one that actually attacks it.
And according to the source, here's how that fracturing actually happens. Specific verses get pulled out of their bigger context, and they're not used to heal or restore people, but to condemn them. This creates a whole narrative of judgment and control, and it completely replaces that original message of love and remembrance. So here you can see the two frameworks laid out side by side. It's so clear. One runs on fear and control, and it's all about policing behavior. The other runs on truth and alignment, and it's focused on remembering where we come from. It's a fundamental shift, away from focusing on what you do and toward remembering who you are.
This is such a crucial reframing of the whole thing. The text argues that religious law was never meant to crush our identity. It was meant to protect it. It was supposed to be like a guardrail, helping us preserve and remember the divinity that we already have.
And this brings us right to the solution. If the problem is that we've forgotten who we are, well, the solution is remembrance. The core idea is that identity comes first. Who you are is way more fundamental than what you do.
Okay, now this is probably the text's most provocative claim. But you have to notice the context very carefully. This isn't about some kind of ego trip. It's framed as an awakening to our origin, just remembering that divine spark that was placed within us right from the start.
This logic also completely changes the definition of sin. It's no longer just a list of bad things you did. In this view, sin is redefined as that internal voice of accusation, any thought that attacks your identity and tells you that you're separate or unworthy or disconnected.
So what about hell? Well, the source defines it not as a place you go when you die, but as a state of consciousness you can be in right now. It's a frequency that's dominated by the energies of that fractured message we talked about: fear, shame, and accusation.
And on the flip side, heaven isn't a location either. It's described as an operation, a dynamic state of being. It's the experience of being in alignment with our divine origin. It's the frequency of truth, the total opposite end of the spectrum.
So, if heaven and hell are frequencies, then how do we tune in to the right one? The text actually proposes an answer through the physics of the universe itself. We're talking sound, vibration, and resonance.
The principle here is that sound is literally a creative force. The idea is that just like the entire universe responded to a spoken word, our own consciousness is shaped by the frequencies we choose to align with. Life, it suggests, actually moves by resonance.
And this is why what we listen to is so incredibly critical. The text connects the physical act of hearing to the metaphysical act of forming our beliefs. Basically, what we hold to be true, what we call our faith, is literally built from the frequencies we allow into our minds.
So it really breaks down into two paths of sound. You've got distorted sound, the frequency of accusation and fear, and that just drags our consciousness down. But then you have aligned sound, the frequency of truth and identity, and that has the power to awaken us, to literally lift our spirit.
And then the source makes a pretty bold claim that these principles are actually well understood. It suggests that things like sound, rhythm, and repetition
are sometimes used on purpose to keep people anchored in those lower states of consciousness, to keep them disconnected from their true identity. So, let's bring all this together. The final message is really one of empowerment. It's a call to tune into a different frequency, the one that restores our identity and awakens us from the inside out.
So, what are the big takeaways? First, salvation isn't something you earn, it's something that's revealed. It's a shift from striving to seeing. Second, divinity isn't forced on you from the outside, it's awakened from within. And finally, this idea of raising the dead, it's reframed as a metaphor for waking up minds that have been asleep in fear.
And we end on this final challenge from the source. It's not just about passively listening. It's a call to develop a whole new kind of hearing. It's an invitation to tune our inner ear to the frequency of truth and to listen for the resonance of that inherent divinity deep within us. So the final question it really leaves us with is this: what would change if you actually started listening for it?